Hey, what's up? I'm Seth Warburton, and this is What Movies Teach, the channel where I analyze the direct and indirect lessons and messages in movies to ultimately decide if it's something I want to share with my kids and that I'm happy watching for myself. Okay, so I'm continuing with the MCU. I'm really excited because I want to share the MCU with my kids and I want to know what it's teaching them so I can make that decision. I reviewed Iron Man yesterday, I looked at those lessons, and now I'm looking at the lessons in the movie The Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk is a little bit of a black sheep in the MCU. It's not on the DisneyPlus Phase 1. It was done by a different studio. I don't think they have the rights to it right now. And it just wasn't really a big standout film. I'm not sure why. I think it actually was a little bit because the one before it, there's an Incredible Hulk that came out before it, was really bad. I remember watching it and I walked away from it just confused. It was horrible. So they came out with this next Incredible Hulk. I thought it was good though. It's the second movie of the MCU. It represents this character. It's a more simple movie. So let's get into the review. Let's talk about what the lessons are in this movie, and I'll let you know what I think. Okay, getting into this movie, spoiler alert, I'm gonna talk all about it. So first, this movie starts out on a super high note for me because it starts in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I love Rio. I spent 2 years there back in my bachelor days, and it's an amazing place. Rio is so fun. And so this movie already gets 100 awesome points just for being in that location. This movie actually is very different than the other MCU movies that you see where it's a full-on origin story. You see how that hero became that hero. In this movie, in The Incredible Hulk, you see Bruce become the Hulk, kind of, in the opening credits. Which a lot of movies don't even have opening credits anymore. But you see this whole montage, and he becomes the Hulk, he can't control it, a lot of people gets injured, the woman he loves gets injured, and he's so sad about that, he runs away, and you understand that he's been on the run for a long time, and he ended up in Brazil. So you see Bruce Banner, the main character, the guy who is the Incredible Hulk. He is in Brazil and he's trying to figure out how to get rid of the Hulk. That is the big thing this entire movie. He wants it out of him. He does not want to have it inside him anymore because he cannot control himself when he's the Hulk. He has a hard time controlling himself. He creates a lot of damage. So his big thing, how to get rid of it. So he's hiding in Brazil, mostly because the government who funded all of his research into the super soldier serum of how he would become super strong and a better person that ultimately turned him into the Hulk, they're looking for him because they want to understand what he did. And he doesn't want them to get that power. He wants to hold that power away from the government, keep that power away from the government because he's afraid they're going to use it in a bad way. And there's some big themes of power throughout this entire movie. And so he's hiding in Brazil, he's looking for a cure, and he's working at a factory in Brazil. So the first lesson that I learned from this movie is that if you cut yourself in a factory and your blood can possibly kill somebody because of all the radiation in it, you should be very thorough when you're looking for that blood. So the next lesson, though, you see after the whole blood incident, is that Bruce is really trying hard to stay calm. He's realized that when he gets angry, he turns into the Hulk, when he loses control of his emotions. However, he sees this lady being picked on in the factory that he works, and he's worried about getting involved. You can see him hesitate. He actually walks away from the situation, but then he comes back. And I think that's the next lesson in this movie, and it's one that is actually carried throughout. It's a lesson that you still help people, even when it's not advantageous for yourself. I mean, this is a theme that you see throughout this movie, and I love it. So that's something I'd really want my kids to see. That he sees somebody's in trouble. It might be really bad for him. It might maybe turn him into the Hulk. That could be dangerous for everybody. So that's maybe a little irresponsible. But he knows that he should do something because he can do something, and so he goes over. He helps this lady, and even though it comes back to bite him in the butt later, he gets that done. What does happen later is that the government tracks him down. There's a big brawl. Some of the people from the factory find him as well that were mistreating this lady, and so there's this confrontation at the factory. Ultimately, he turns into the Hulk. He gets upset. He fights off the government. He fights off these other bullies from the factory, and he runs away. But then we see this theme of helping people even when it's convenient carried throughout the movie. And not just from him. So you see Bruce, he's in a very different situation than Tony Stark ever was. Tony Stark had all the money in the world, could do whatever he wanted, kind of sat in his basement and figured things out. Bruce is almost the exact opposite. He has no money, he has no connection, and he is just depressed. He's sad. That's the one thing that maybe people didn't really love from this movie, and from the characterization of Bruce Banner. It's Edward Norton in this movie, and he's a great actor. I mean, Fight Club, anybody? So you see Bruce in this situation where he's sad and depressed, and he has to ask people for help. And, just like he went out of his way to help people, you see people going out of their way to help him. He gets picked up from, off the road all the time. He's always looking for clothes and for food, and people are going out of their way to help him. Even there's one time where he's just depressed and sitting on the side of the road, and some kid comes over and gives him some money because he thinks he's homeless. And I think that's really cool. Again, it's just that theme throughout, that lesson throughout, that if you can help somebody, you should. And he does. So eventually Bruce makes it back to the United States of America. I think it takes him like 17 days to get there, and he's walking the whole time. Not quite sure how that worked, but whatever, it did. He makes it back to the United States. What he's trying to do is get rid of the Hulk, right? Like I said, that's the theme this entire time. And he needs his research from his original studies for Mr. Blue to be able to come up with a cure. That's what he's trying to do. Meanwhile, the government's pretty upset because they got beat in Brazil. One of the guys, his name is Blonsky, he sees the Hulk and he is just super interested in this monster with tons of power, and he wants that as well. So he goes to Ross. Ross is the main antagonist of this movie. He's the guy who got Bruce to start studying about being a super soldier and basically gave him the money to turn himself into the Hulk. And he wants to now use that Hulk power, that serum, whatever he can get out of his blood, and studying him and use it for the government. So Ross is pretty much the bad guy. He's the general. Unfortunately, his daughter is Bruce's love interest. So there's all of that. But you see something else here. You see Blonsky, who really wants the power of the Hulk. And you see Ross, who does not learn from his mistakes. I think that's the next major lesson in this movie, is that you have to learn from your mistakes. You see Bruce on one hand, who is always adapting and changing to be able to stay away from the government. He's really good at knowing how to stay off the grid. Ross, on the other hand, as soon as Blonsky comes up to him and says, "Wow, that's really cool power. I wish I could have something like that," Ross is like, "You know what? It didn't really work with Bruce, but maybe it'll work with you." And so he gives him some of the serum. It doesn't make any sense. So the story goes where they track Bruce down. He's back in the United States. He's at the university where he was studying, and he finds his old girlfriend. She has kind of moved on in her life. She actually is dating somebody else. It's actually the guy from Modern Family, Phil Dunphy. He's hilarious. Ty Burrell. I love him in Modern Family. And I forgot even that he was in this movie. And so that was interesting. So I again, forgot all about that kind of side character of the boyfriend. He doesn't last long. Betty eventually goes back with Bruce. In fact, the government tracks Bruce down at the university. They attack him. He turns into the Hulk again. It's great action. It's a lot of fun. Blonsky has now got some of the serum in him. He's not as strong as Hulk, but he goes after him as fast as he can. He tries to attack him. Again, another lesson, the government doesn't really learn that guns don't work on the Incredible Hulk. They keep shooting at him, and they've never worked, and they keep doing that. Eventually, they do bring out some like sonic waves that kind of help. But again, learn from your mistakes, learn from your past. It works for Bruce. It's not really working for the government here. Blonsky attacks Bruce as the Hulk. The Hulk just takes him out, just basically gives him a punt. He kicks him in the gut, and the guy breaks all his bones in his body. The Hulk's really strong. So then Betty comes over to try and talk down the Hulk, but Ross, her dad, doesn't realize that she's out there trying to talk to him, and he sends the big gunship to go attack, and almost kills his own daughter. Hulk protects her because you realize that some of Bruce is still in there. There's still goodness in this monster, and there's this big explosion, but Hulk saves Betty, and then they run off together. So there you go. So at this point in the film, you start to understand that Bruce really does not like being the Hulk. It causes problems every time. He really wants to be with Betty. They even start kissing and everything, and his little heart meter that tells him his heart is beating too fast and it might turn into the Hulk starts going off, and so he stops, which is actually kind of a funny situation. So finally, they get to Mr. Blue, who's a professor, and he lives in New York City, and he's gonna help Bruce get rid of the Hulk. Now, he doesn't really want to. You can tell that the morals of this guy are very gray. Like, he would be okay creating hundreds of Hulks just because he wants to do that. He's kind of the mad scientist of the situation. But he also thinks it's cool to maybe try and stop the Hulk because, again, it's a new situation. He's the mad scientist. And so they run an experiment, and we think that they maybe got rid of the Hulk. He's actually not sure. But they give him this serum, he starts turning into the Hulk, and then he turns back to Bruce almost immediately. And they're like, wow, is it gone? And he's like, I don't know, but maybe it is. So then the government, again, they're always behind him, tracks him back down to where he's at. They shoot him with a tranquilizer. They put him in handcuffs, and they take Bruce away. Meanwhile, Blonsky comes to the doctor in New York who helped Bruce get rid of the Hulk, and he says, I want to become like the Hulk is. And this doctor's like, okay, sure. I mean, whatever. I'll give it to you. So he straps Blonsky in. He gives him some of the Hulk's blood. He turns into this big, what they call the Abomination, this big, almost Hulk-like guy. And he just starts destroying everything. He doesn't kill the doctor, but he does kill a lot of soldiers and a lot of civilians. So, Bruce is in a helicopter. He's being flown off to prison, I guess, or something like that, because he was the Hulk. I don't know why exactly they're taking him to prison. Ross is there. He's really upset at him. And then they see on the news that this Abomination is attacking New York City and destroying everything. Again, Ross never learned from his mistakes. He gave this guy power, originally that he was trying to get from Bruce, not realizing the big lesson of this whole movie is that it's not about just having power. It's about what you do with it. In other words, with great power comes great responsibility. It's not just the power. It's got to be the right person. It's got to be somebody who's going to do good with it. And Ross, he doesn't quite understand that. And Bruce knows that. And that's why he's so worried about, them getting the Hulk formula or whatever that is. And so the big finale is that Bruce is in this helicopter, and he knows that maybe he can use the power of the Hulk to stop the Abomination. He can't quite control the Hulk, but he knows there's goodness in Hulk, and the other people have seen that as well. He's gone out of his way to save people, and but he doesn't know if the Hulk is gone. He took this serum, and it might have been washed out of him. He's not sure. But he knows he needs to help. And so again, back to that original lesson of, help people even when it doesn't help you and even when it might be dangerous for you. And so he jumps out of the helicopter and he doesn't transform. At first, he falls to the ground and then he changes into the Hulk and then they have this big old battle. And in fact, Ross, eventually you kind of see turn around a little bit. He's not a very nice guy, but you see that he has this moment of change where he sees the Hulk sacrifice himself, or Bruce sacrifice himself to save everybody, and so he gets his helicopter down there and he starts trying to help Hulk, Bruce as well fight the Abomination, and the Abomination actually brings down the helicopter and almost destroys them. But he put himself in danger to help too, and so it's again that original lesson: you help when it's inconvenient. You just help when you can, no matter what. In the end, the Hulk wins. He defeats the Abomination, runs off again, and then you see at the very end of the movie, he's actually trying to control the Hulk. He's trying to become the Hulk instead of trying to get rid of it. So, a turnaround, a flip. He went from trying to get rid of the entire movie, then sees that maybe he can do some good with it, and keeps it. So, that's the Incredible Hulk. I believe, again, that big lesson is, some people have power, some people don't, but it's what you do with that power that really matters. Blonsky tried to destroy everybody. It made him go crazy. Bruce was trying to get rid of it, but still had it, and then tried to use it to do good. And that's essentially the lesson. It's a simple lesson. I think that's maybe another one of the downsides to this movie, is that you kind of have the same type of problem the whole time, the same character. He doesn't really develop into something different until the very end. There's not huge arcs as far as the character development is concerned. But some good lessons. So the big question at the end here is, should my kids watch The Incredible Hulk? And looking at these lessons, the lessons are great. So on that side, yes. But I also look at the content. I talked about this with Iron Man a little bit. Some of the content can distract from those lessons. Just a quick example. We watched Tangled. It's a Disney cartoon movie. It's very tame. But at the very end, the bad guy dies. She kind of turns into dust. When my daughter watched this, when she was, I think, 4 or 5, that part traumatized her. I had no idea. I should have known that. She watched that and she's super scared. And that's the only thing she remembers about that movie. And so thinking about your kids and some of the content is really important. And so I'm doing that personally for me. And so these things that I talk about as far as content's concerned is what I think about for my kids. I don't think there's any real language, though, that stuck out that I think would distract my kids. He does swear when he's falling from the helicopter, but it's more funny. So there's some violence, not a lot of blood, and the violence is a part of pushing the story. Some big action, but I didn't think it was anything too graphic or anything that would cause my kids to not learn or get those main messages out of the movie. So in the end, looking at The Incredible Hulk, it is one that I would show to my kids, my 12-year-old, my 10-year-old, my 7 and my 5-year-old, maybe, just because it might not be something they're interested in quite yet. I might hold off with the younger two. Kind of have my older two and my younger two. But my 12-year-old and my 10-year-old, it's definitely one that they could handle and wouldn't be bad for them to watch. And so there you go. That's The Incredible Hulk. Let me know what you think, what you learned from it. Was it something completely different? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you liked this review, then like this video or subscribe to the channel to get more reviews just like this. And I'll talk to you soon.